Hey, how's it going, everyone? So, like she said, my name is Bree by day. By night, I'm Dio9sys. That's kind of my hacker handle slash online persona thing. You know how it goes. So this is me by day. This is how you'll probably see me when I post just the worst things you've ever seen on Mastodon. By day, I do detection engineering research, and by night, I just get bored and I play with protocols and I play with technologies. And I found this one technology that seemed really fun, and so I kind of did a deep dive into it. So, first, I'm going to talk a little bit about NFC, the protocol standards, kind of how it works, some very, very basic radio theory, and then I'll show you a demo of how to implant them into an artificial fingernail. After that, I'll talk a little bit about Amtrak, why I specifically like it for travel as a trans woman, and then we can take questions. So, like I said before, my credentials, I'm a radio operator, so I do lots of weird radio stuff. I have a few certifications, but none of them will really apply to this talk. I just needed to list that to appease the InfoSec gods. And I occasionally paint my nails when I get bored, usually when I'm watching X-Files. So if you ever just don't hear from me for hours at a time, it's because I'm watching The Smoking Man and painting my nails to look like the color of his shoes. In terms of what I do for a living, I'm a detection engineering researcher at Greenwich Intelligence. Um, Basically, what that means is I look for vulnerabilities, any new CVEs, things like that. I look for evidence of that being exploited in the wild, and then I write a tag on that. With that said, none of this talk is going to be about that. None of this is going to be like a recruiting or a sales thing. And just to prove that, like, I'm not being paid off to do this, here's a bunch of copyrighted images from very litigious people. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get started with nails. So first, let's talk about what radio frequency is, how it's used, and also maybe a quick boiled peanuts recipe. So RF stands for radio frequency. It's kind of the shorthand that most everyone in this space uses to talk about computers that talk through space instead of over wires. It's used for anywhere from Bluetooth to Wi-Fi. There's like spurious emissions that can come out of power lines. It's kind of the mana that flows all over the place if you know how to look for it. If you need to make good boiled peanuts, use an Instant Pot. 25 minutes pre-cook. It's great. Here is an example of the RF band plan. This shows what amateur radio operators can do with various sections of frequency. So you can see anywhere from 160 meter wavelength down to 23 meter or 23 centimeter wavelength, and then for anything from audio to CW to being able to send an upper sideband phone signal to being able to strictly send data and satellite images. There's a lot of things that you can do with regular radio things, and NFC comes outside of these band plans, but is kind of similar to the fixed digital messaging forwarding systems only sections of the band plan. So very high frequency and very specific use. So what is RFID? Well, RFID stands for radio frequency identification. This is mostly a tag system. It operates on a number of different frequencies depending on how people use it. This one's kind of a little bit more loosey-goosey than NFC, but it is kind of the granddaddy of kind of everything we're going to be talking about. So you can use it for things like office doors. You can use it to tag wild animals. You can use it for library books. My husband is a library scientist, and he's very proud of the advances he's been able to make in RFID library book things. So you know who to thank for that. NFC, it's a newer protocol. It stands for Near Field Communication. It is in no way related to NFTs. I've run into a problem. I was at a convention, and I was talking to someone about doing NFC nails, and they're like, oh, does that connect to your crypto wallet? And I was like, absolutely not. Please don't do that. You will make me cry. NFC specifically operates at 13.56 megahertz. And it's used for a number of things. If you have like Samsung Pay or Apple Pay or Huawei Pay or any of the other smartphones or smartwatches that have some kind of pay system, then chances are you are using NFC. It's also used for transit passes. So if you have like an Oyster card, if you have like a BART card, which actually you can even use the NFC chip in your phone as a BART card now if you live in the Bay Area, very cool stuff. And then some people will use it for things like connecting their business cards to their website. Or you'll have like a debit card with a tiny NFC thing so you can do tap to pay, but like with your debit card. I have one of those and it's a little scary, but kind of cool. So here's some examples of it kind of showing up everywhere. This little NFC logo, the hand holding a nondescript microchip in front of the sound waves, you'll start to notice it everywhere once you start looking for it. It's like legitimately everywhere. It's wonderful and horrible all at once. We'll get to that. So how exactly do these things work? So without getting too much into it, there's this concept in physics where basically if you have a conducting metal and it is in an antenna configuration, usually 1/4 or 1/2 the wavelength of the kind of signal that you are trying to receive, if the signal gets blasted strong enough, it will actually conduct a small amount of electricity. That electricity can actually be strong enough to route to a tiny processor. So the way that NFC works is you have this circular antenna that's probably about a quarter wavelength of the 13.45 megahertz. And you'll notice that there's these two wires right along the top of the antenna. One of them goes to the outward pins, and then the other goes to this kind of resin blob in the center. That's actually a processor. When you send a thing to, like, if you use an NFC chip, you have a transmitter, usually like a credit card reader or like your phone, and then the NFC chip itself will turn on just long enough to spit out whatever data it has sitting in RAM or ROM, depending on the chip, and then it will turn itself back off because it no longer has any electricity. It's kind of magical, and I kind of super love it. There's lots of really cool things that you can do with that. One example is there are stickers that have LED lights attached to an NFC antenna. And so then when you get close to an NFC source, then the light turns on. It's a lot of fun. So when I was first looking into contactless things, I was torn between whether or not I want to do RFID and NFC. Because RFID is kind of the sexy side of it, because like a lot of people will use that for like badge cloning, things like that. And it's an old standard, so it's really easy to like find information. But the equipment can be pretty specialized and kind of expensive. You know, you can get like a Proxmark 0, 2. You can get a Proxmark device of their cheapest variety, and it's not as bad, but once you get any further past that, it can quickly get to being, you know, hundreds of dollars of equipment. NFC, the pro is you can literally program it with a lot of modern smartphones. And so that makes the barrier to entry much, much lower. And there's a lot of less cool cyber espionage uses for it, but that are still fun. A lot of people do amiibo cloning. If any of you play Super Smash Bros. Competitively, you know what I'm talking about. It can be super small. You can embed it into things. You can glue transceivers to the backs of things to like turn them into a smart device. It's a lot of fun. But the problem is it's a closed standard. And what that means is the info on how NFC works is held behind closed doors. And I tried to get the standards document, and the only way I could find it was if I wanted to pay $600 for access to a PDF file. There are, of course, I'm sure, ways of getting around that, but I was trying to find a legitimate way of accessing these documents, and I could not find any for lower than $600, which is a problem, because I'm not made out of money. You're not made out of money. I really wanted to see how these things worked. So I said, well, surely it couldn't cost that much to like figure out how it works and then do something with it. So I started reading a bunch of sales pages, and I started reading between the lines, because what you'll notice is that a lot of these pamphlets about various NFC products will kind of give a little bit of detail, not the full picture, but if you collect enough little crumbs, you can start to get a picture for how these things work under the hood. And that's really what we're looking for here, if we want to do anything more advanced than what I'm going to show in the demo today. So, thus started my quest. How was I going to make cool NFC fingernails for less than the $600 cost that some fancy salon in Dubai was doing it for? And how can I learn this standard for the less than the like $550, $600 cost for the paper? Well, first I have to figure out where I'm going to buy the equipment. I do not know anybody with like a PCB warehouse or anything like that, so I kind of had to go off of what I could find on my favorite search engines. I looked at a bunch of options. I looked on like AliExpress to see if I could get something for cheap and functional, things like that. Finally, I went, well, let's check with Adafruit, because I really like them as a company just because they make weird stuff. And sure enough, I found the perfect thing. The micro NFC/RFID transponder NTAG 203 13.56 megahertz NFC transceiver. It is smaller than a quarter. Each one costs less than $3. It is unbelievably thin. It's like a piece of film with little traces on it. And I could buy it and have it show up to my door from a company that I knew wasn't going to take the money and run. So I looked at all my other options. I looked at the benefits of Adafruit, decided that it outweighed any of the potential extra costs that I was going to be spending by not buying in bulk from some obscure warehouse that you can order them if you know a guy. I don't know a guy yet. So I bought them from Adafruit, and so far that's been a really good option for me. Disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by them. They haven't sent me any free NFC transceivers. I just stand by the transceivers they make. Maybe not like every single other thing in their catalog, because I haven't tested all of it, but I really like this one thing. So how do I program it? Well, again, Adafruit, they had a YouTube video showing various product catalog items, and one of them was this tiny transceiver, and they showed how to program it. They used an app called NFC Tools by WhackDev or WakeDev, one of the two. And so I said, yeah, that'll work because it's free. So I downloaded it, and I haven't caught any malware on my phone yet, so I trust it. And it's actually really good. So then I looked into the specs of the actual chipset used in this Adafruit transceiver. It doesn't have a lot of memory. You can see here it's got 168 bytes total memory, but the user available space is typically 144 bytes unless you start playing with the bootloader, which I have no intentions of doing. So, tiny. You can send small URLs, you can send small messages. It kind of becomes a game of code golf a little bit when you're trying to get fancy with it, and I will show that in a little bit. But it's still something, so let's go ahead and try it. The first time that I got a tag, I tried my best to just like glue it onto a fingernail with a base coat, and it didn't work. It was a very sad day. The second time, I did a base coat, and then I glued the transceiver on top of the base coat, and then colored the whole thing with acrylic paints, and it looked like garbage, but it worked. I was able to write a tag, and I was able to scan it. So once I was able to show that it can sort of technically work, I had to look into how I can do this in a way that people will actually want to wear it. So I did further experimentation. This time, I just glued it to my nail, and I didn't paint it at all. Kind of a cool look. This is kind of my go-to if you show up at like a house party at DEF CON and you saw me gluing transceivers on people's nails, this is what I was doing. I wasn't painting on top of it or anything. I was taking the quickest set nail glue I could find and then pushing it down with my fingers and then losing a little bit of skin off of my fingertips while I had to pull away from the nail. But it works. So, kind of a cool look. And the most important thing was it was super easy. But my end goal here wasn't something like that. I really wanted something that could be very discreet. My dream with this is I could have fancy nails. People could scan over my hand, and then they could get access to my social media, my portfolio, an iCar test file, things like that. Eventually, I got to this, and the way that we get to that is if I just skip using my real nails entirely. I do not have a lot of experience with false nails, or acrylic nails, whatever they're called, but I do live close to a Walgreens, and they happen to have some in the shelf. And at first I thought maybe I would have to like take a Dremel and like make a channel for the transceiver, and then I would slot it in and then cover it with like a gel base coat, and then I would cure it, and I would use this giant flashlight that I got that does UV at exactly the right spectrum for that, and I had all these grand ambitions. And then I realized that it's really not that complicated. I can just glue it in a way where it lies flat, and it's fine. So, first I tried just attaching a chip to the top of the nail. And it worked. It was, again, ugly, but it worked. Okay, so then I looked into the bottom thing. I tried the divot thing. It didn't work. I tried just gluing it flat, and, drum roll please, it doesn't look terrible. It's not what I would call, like, high fashion, but it works. And I was really excited at this point. So I did the rest of my nails with a combination of regular fake nails and NFC nails. And then I painted over all of them with gel coat. And looking at this photo, because I have it memorized which fingernails I had the NFC chips under, I can tell. But if I didn't already know, I wouldn't be able to tell. And that was really what I was going for here, because I wanted it to be like a cool party trick. So let me show a demo of how to do this, because I eventually got it down. It's super duper messy, but I eventually got it down to an art form. So let me pull up a video. Here we go. This video is soundless because it was all just me heavy breathing. There is some nail glue and the false nail and the NFC transceiver. So step 1, you take a couple solid drops of that nail glue, and then you take your forceps. I recommend taking ones that you don't mind if they get ruined, because they will get ruined. Of course, you have to fumble with grabbing the thing at first. There's a reason why I work with computers and why I am not like a grand sculptor, because my hands just don't always do what I want them to do. So eventually I got the transceiver in there, and then you line it up in the center, and you want to push down on either end with the ends of your forceps. This is going to put as much surface area against the nail as possible, and this is going to let the glue really adhere. If you don't do this, it can flake off and it can bend, and then your nail falls off, or the acrylic nail, not your real nail. And it's just not a vibe. But you hold it down, you count to a solid 10 seconds if using the quick dry glue, and then you kind of shake it off of your forceps, and then you do the classic fake out when you realize you should put it on your real nail now. And then same basic thing that you do if you're doing press-on nails. You put a couple drops of glue down, you put the nail there, and then you hold it for a while. Again, I did another 10 seconds. A side note, during this video, I don't have any fancy camera setup or anything, so to film this, I used a laptop stand that I extended all the way to its tallest thing, and then I counterweighted it with a couple of books so that I could carefully balance my phone on the open bottom of it. But it worked. So cheap film setup, which is why this is not a live demo, because I do not have 3 hands. Okay. So, sorry, that was a whirlwind, but we will do questions in like 2 minutes once I finish the Amtrak portion. So, once you have it glued on, you can use your NFC Tools app. And if you hold the Tools app in the read position over your nail, then you can see you have a MyFair Ultralight NFC transceiver. You can see the various technologies available for it. You can see that it's an NFC Forum Type 2 transceiver, which is an important distinction. It means that you can read and write to it, and you can do a number of different things with it that you can't do with, say, a Type 1 transceiver. It's currently set to writable, and yeah, you can make it read-only if you really want to. You could do that if you want to, like, really have, like, a set business cards thing where you set them to read-only so that nobody can mess with them later. So let's go ahead and try programming it. So what you can do is you go to the right section, and there's an Add Record button. If you press that button, you can enter URLs, you can enter social media links. This is just an example text record just to check. So happy PancakesCon, I wrote that in. And then you can choose to write to the NFC tag, and you put the NFC tag next to your phone, and it writes. So then the next time you scan it, it'll say happy PancakesCon. But there's also some more advanced things you can do with this. And this is part of how it can be used in like a penetration testing. There is a companion app to NFC Tools called NFC Tasks, and that gives you more operating system access to Android devices. So that can be used to open pop-ups on your phone. It can be used to send notifications. It can be used to set up like a password prompt where you have to enter some text, and then it will save that text into memory and then post it somewhere else. I'm sure you can see where we're going here. So one example that you could do is you could send, say, a phishing email pretending to be your company IT team, and you could say, hey, we have this new login system. Please install this app called NFC Tasks, and then we will have somebody come by to make sure everything's working later and like do onboarding for it. And then you can come in, you can scan, you know, an NFC transceiver taped to the back of a black plastic card, and they'll think it's some fancy access device. And then you can make it say all kinds of scary things to get them to do what you need them to do. So you can go to the task section, you can click add task, and here's an example of a notification. Sorry to all the pancake stands out there. And then if you want to get more advanced with it, if you want to do something a little bit scarier, you can make a pop-up notification. So this is where you really have to worry about your byte limit, because if you go over bytes, it will not write. I had to rewrite this phishing attempt like 3 different times, just removing various characters and changing the URL shortener until I got one that was able to fit in the memory that I had available. So I did all that. I wrote it to the NFC tag, and then when you scan it, it will give you this really scary thing that says your phone is infected. Go to this URL. And if you go to that URL right now, it should just be pictures of red pandas. If it shows anything other than just pictures of red pandas, then I'm very sorry, the URL must have rotated. But I made this morning, so it should still be fairly innocent. Okay, that was a lot. Let's talk about Amtrak. So, similar to my problem of wanting to get nails that were fancy, I had another problem I needed to solve, which is I am a transgender woman. Anytime I fly, it sucks. Here is my arch nemesis, the L3 Pro Vision 2. This is a beautiful, beautiful body scanner made with the highest technology and programmed by people who definitely are good at their job. And what it does is it takes a 3D image of your body, through your clothes if your clothes aren't too thick, and then the TSA agent, it doesn't like have shapes for bombs or anything. Literally what it is the TSA agent has two presets, a blue preset and a pink preset. That is based off of the most average looking binary cisgender people. All the love in the world to you guys. I do not share your body shape. So naturally what that means is anytime I go through a body scanner, it will show anomalies. It will show anomalies in the chest. It will show anomalies in the groin. And when the TSA sees anomalies because you are anomalous compared to your cisgender peers, they have to get handsy. Just gonna let you put 2 and 2 together with that. It's not a great time. And it happens basically every time I fly. It's a problem. And it got to the point to where I was just not traveling much at all because I didn't want to deal with it. It's a hassle. It's stressful. If you've ever had to be questioned and touched inappropriately by a stranger in public for the right to get on an airplane that you paid for a ticket for, you know what I'm talking about. Now imagine that happens every time you try to fly. So, they also rarely get sensitivity training. They're doing a little better in the past year or two than they did, say, in 2017, but that's not saying much. It's great. I once had a woman, she was, bless her heart, she was doing her best. She had absolutely no idea what a trans person really was. So anomalies started going off on the body scanner. She had to do the whole back of the hand touch against the groin thing, and she looks and she tries to very politely go, "Ma'am, are you on your period? Is that like a pad in your pants?" And I had to go, "Ma'am, I'm just trans." And she recoiled her hand like I was a venomous snake and was like, "Have a good day." And that was one of the more pleasant experiences that you can have with an untrained TSA professional. Airports are terrible too. I just don't like okay, flying itself, the actual act of flying is fine, but I cannot stand airports or TSA. It's all binary bathrooms, so non-binary people will good luck finding a place to pee because it will always be crowded with exactly the kinds of people who you don't want to get into an argument with. It's a problem. So what are some solutions that we could get? Well, first, let's talk about how I normally get ready to fly. So I have to put on a specific pair of underwear that doesn't make any anomalies go on. I have to pray that it doesn't get bunched up or anything and make the anomalies go off. I have this one specific loose dress. It keeps getting holes in it. I keep patching it to hell and back because it's the only one that I wear that I regularly don't get stopped at the TSA. I guess because it's thin enough that they can see everything going on in their body scanner. I've had to learn to stop using hand lotion before I fly because the glycerol on the hand lotion will make their bomb detectors go off. And that's always a very fun thing when you have anomalies all over your body and then the bomb detectors go off. It's a very great line of questioning that I certainly love it to answer. And then I do the normal, I check my hair. I have to shave, and I have to make sure that I shave really well so that there's no nicks or anything so that people don't accuse me of being somebody trying to invade their bathroom. You're noticing a pattern here. It's a thing. Basically, if you're trans and you fly and you have any history of showing up on anomaly scans, you have to plan out your entire wardrobe and suitcase organization around the assumption that the TSA will think you're a terrorist. Lord knows I am incredibly privileged in several aspects of my life in that being trans is the only reason why they think I'm a threat. But even just the little taste that I've had is not great. So what are some solutions that we could do to get past this whole rigmarole? Well, I could get global entry or a TSA pre-check, but that's expensive and it's a process. And I had a friend who did it and it took forever and she had to be interviewed and then her kid had to be interviewed. I really didn't like it. It just seems like a whole process just to say I am rich enough to be considered a safe passenger. I can do everything I mentioned in my previous slides, and that usually works sometimes. It's worked a lot better recently than it has in past years. Make of that what you will. I could just refuse to give a shit and let them ping me on all of the things, but I really don't want to end up on a list. And I don't know how many times I'm allowed to show up and look anomalous and have bomb detectors go off before they start, putting a little note on my plane ticket to say that I need to be asked some questions by some agents, right? But I respect people who can do that. Another option is I can just, get all of the surgery and I can do the vocal training and I can make sure that nobody can really clock that I'm trans at the airports. That is an option. And again, that is a money option. But also it's kind of bullshit that I would have to pay out of pocket for $100,000 just to not have the inconvenience of the TSA trying to fuel me up every time I fly. So what would be the real solution? Well, the real solution is that we should have more training and people should learn to respect trans people. And also we need to just kind of abolish this whole system of security because studies show that it doesn't work and they get false negatives as often as they get false positives. I have lots of opinions, but we're not going to get into those right now because we're going to keep moving. So, what else can we do? Who is our hero in this time of need? Amtrak. Amtrak. And Amtrak. I'm a big fan of Amtrak. You know why I like Amtrak? They don't care that I'm trans. Here's a... Oh, that wasn't... One moment. Sorry. I'm going to change the animation on this so that it will go behind things. Send backwards. Send backwards. Okay. So, here's why I like Amtrak. There's no TSA. You show up maybe 15 minutes before the train arrives. It pulls in. Somebody on my route, frequently a dude with just a great mustache, will show up at 4 a.m, and then you show them a little QR code on your phone with the mobile app that's very convenient to open and use, and then you just step on the train. It's wonderful. There's a cafe car where on the bottom floor you can buy treats, and on the top floor it's an observation deck. So there's these massive windows and these big curved windows along the ceiling. You can get wonderful views, and there's comfortable chairs and tables, and the snacks aren't half bad either. You can be a little bougie, and if you get a roomette or a cabin, you even get a tablecloth dining service that used to be available to all passengers, but they've been reorganizing all that lately. But it's really nice, and then they pay for all of it if you have a roomette, so it's great. The train rides super smooth. It will occasionally have the equivalent to turbulence, but even the most turbulent train ride I've had is still better than some plane rides I've had. Just the sheer nature of it. It's not pushing as much air around it, so it doesn't shake as much. The conductors are usually their standards are pretty low for riders. All the love in the world to Amtrak dudes, because I've had train conductors who don't care that I'm trans. They're just excited that I know how to throw away my garbage. It's wonderful. And you get some amazing views. Right behind here, about a month ago, I had to go to San Francisco for a work meeting. I was able to use Amtrak through my work travel budgeting thing. And here's just a picture of a random spot close to the Bay Area that I got in the observation car. It was a beautiful day. It was sunset. You can't get that kind of view in a plane. Planes have some amazing views, but you can't get exactly this view from a plane. And I love doing landscape photography on my phone. Plus, even if you ride coach, here's how comfy the seats are. Here's how much space you have. And this is on one of their lower end models for longer term trains. Some shorter lines, some of the regional ones out northeast will have a little less leg room. But if you're going anywhere on a long distance or a sleeper train, you get a lot of foot room. It's beautiful. Here's some of the drawbacks, because there are drawbacks to flying by to traveling by Amtrak. It's slower than flying, which is a given. But how fast do we actually need to go places? Because I've had a lot of things where people are like aghast that I wouldn't want to go to the airport because the flight is so much faster. Because like, why would you ride for 10 hours in a train when you can show up for 2 hours before your flight, get on your flight, ride that flight for 2 hours, and then wait 30 minutes at your destination airport to get all of your luggage. So trains do go slower, but the convenience kind of makes it worth it to me. And then you can also do things on the train. I struggle to get anything done on airplanes, but I can usually set up shop in the cafe car on a train and like get some work done. Trains do get delayed, and that is a problem. They can be up to like 16 hours late sometimes. This is largely an issue of the freight companies that run too long of trains to fit the infrastructure that they refuse to update, because private train companies own all of the rails. I have opinions, but we're not going to get into those, or this talk will go for like 3 hours. The tickets can be a little expensive if you book them like right before the train leaves. I always try to book mine at least a month or two ahead of time, usually 6 months, because the ticket pricing is based entirely on how full the train is. The more full it gets, the more they ramp up the price. And then it can be a little bit limited. Unless you live in Chicago, where Amtrak trains go literally everywhere. I love you. I'm jealous of you. I wish I was you. But I live in Utah, which has one train, and it can get me to California, and it can get me to Chicago, and it can get me to all points in between. So I still use it fairly frequently because it's a very easy ride to get from Salt Lake City to Denver, and then you don't have to worry about parking or anything. But that is something to be aware of. If you're going to have to try to go from, say, Rancho Cucamonga, California to Wisconsin, you might have to do some transfers, and train transfers are not ideal, to say the least. So, but if all of those things are things that you can work around, like I've found that I can take it, from Salt Lake to Denver or to California sometimes, it's a really good experience. So the travel is just so much easier because once you figure it out, you'll learn how to hack it a little bit. It's great if you only need to go like one state over. I still take planes sometimes. I'm not 100% anti-plane, though I do have reservations about their carbon emissions. But like, you do have to ride planes occasionally. The world is not perfect yet. So, how do I do this a lot? Well, there's points. You can get points a lot of ways. So here's an example of how the points break down. It can cost 3,053 points to go from Salt Lake City to Denver in June in time for Pride Weekend. And I currently have almost 4,000 points. So I could actually go for free off of my points. And I say for free with a giant asterisk because it comes from me spending things previously, but more on that in like 1 second. You can accumulate points through riding the train, through not riding the train, and through the rewards card. The train, anytime you buy train tickets, you get points. If the train runs super late, sometimes they'll give you points. I was able to use some consolation points to upgrade to a roomette once, and it was wonderful. And if you use like trip actions, or I guess they're called Naven now, or if you use any other business thing, frequently you can add your Amtrak guest rewards number into your profile so that you can get points just for traveling on the corporate dime. And I do that because I travel occasionally for work. Non-train points. Even just for personal travel with no Amtrak involved at all, you can use the Amtrak website and you can use it to book like hotels and to rent cars, and you get points for that. So usually when I go on road trips, I will book it through Amtrak just to get the free points out of something I was already going to be doing. There is a rewards card. Rewards card credit cards are scary. Please be aware of them. That is all I will say about that. All right. What questions do we have?
We are pretty much out of time. That's what we have time for. We had a bunch of chatter in Slack, so I strongly encourage you to hop on in there. And thank you to Dio9sys for a great talk, and I learned today.
Thank you very much. Here's my social medias. Find me on Mastodon is where I'm most active. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.